Hello, English 100 class. This is video 2 on revising Essay 3, your essay on educated. And our focus will be using your own research in the essay. So you can see I have some body paragraphs here that I'll show you. And this document is in Canvas, so you can look at it again if you want. I made up sample paragraphs for essay question 4. And my sample rough thesis is Faye mostly agrees to be a submissive wife in a male-dominated household, but she's empowered in some ways. Of course, Faye is Tara's mother, and so this essay focuses on her. So BP means body paragraph. So this is not an introduction. It's not a conclusion. This is somewhere in the middle of your essay. Okay? So, and I'm going to show you how I suggest using your own research in the essay. All right. So let's look at this first body paragraph. One way that Faye gains some power is through her work as a midwife. This is not new for Mormons. According to Sunstone, a Mormon magazine, Mormon women becoming midwives was significant back in the 19th century, and Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, endorsed midwifery himself. Aldrichs. In the early 20th century, midwifery was still common, but hospital births became the norm by the 1950s. Aldrichs. In the 1960s, however, midwifery makes a comeback, and today many Mormons choose midwives over hospital births. Aldrichs. In Sunstone, Aldrichs explains, quote, Mormon women today choose midwifery care and out-of-hospital birth, though they also have spiritual and religious reasons for their maternity care choices, including a trust in God and a belief in the divine design of the female body to give birth. Aldrichs. Faye and Jean are thus following Mormon tradition in their support of home births and midwifery. So before we go to the next paragraph, a couple things I want you to notice. One important thing is that instead of just using one quote or one bit of information from my source, so my source is the article by Aldrichs, notice that I have about 5 or 6 pieces of information here. So when a student uses just one quote, I call that the magic bullet problem because one quote is not a magic bullet. You have to give more information from your source. So here I have 4 or 5 pieces of information that I put in my own words with citations in parentheses. And I have a quote. I have a lead into my quote right here. I have my quote. I have my citation. And then, of course, you always have to say something after your quote. You don't end the paragraph with a quote. Because remember, it's you're the writer, and you have to be in the driver's seat. Okay? So again, my main advice for you is if you're going to use a source from your research, use it thoroughly. Definitely go back and find some details that will be useful for your essay and devote a paragraph to it. Okay. Next paragraph. Faye becomes a midwife when Tara was a small child, and she is empowered by the experience. So that's my topic sentence. She starts by assisting another midwife and then does it on her own. Faye doesn't have a license, so she could be in legal trouble if something went wrong with a birth. Westover 16. Soon Faye is delivering babies often, and it becomes a big part of her life. Westover 17. Westover, looking back as an adult, realizes that midwifery empowered her mother. Quote, midwifing changed my mother. She was a grown woman with 7 children, but this was the first time in her life that she was, without question or caveat, the one in charge. Sometimes, in the days after her birth, I detected in her something of Judy's heavy presence, in a forceful turn of the head or an imperious arch of an eyebrow. She stopped wearing makeup. Then she stopped apologizing for not wearing it. Westover 17. Here we see that Faye has taken on a kind of power she didn't have before. She is forceful, in charge, even imperious. Remember that Faye is a housewife in a very male-dominated family. As discussed earlier, Westover makes it clear that Dad is the head of the household. and that mom and others are expected to submit to his authority. Also, Faye has no college education, so you can imagine what it meant for her to be doing a job delivering babies that is normally done by a doctor. Faye may often play the role of submissive housewife, but she is now empowered in a way she hadn't been before because she became a midwife. So a couple things about this paragraph. One is that I end the paragraph by nailing home my main point. My main point is that Faye is empowered, so I say it at the end. Some people forget to do that. And notice that I stated that same thing at the beginning of the paragraph. She is empowered by the experience. So one way to make sure your paragraph is focused is to say the same thing at the beginning and then at the end. And your evidence is in the middle. Notice this is all one paragraph. This quote, this is MLA format for a long quote. No quotation marks, right? You indent, but it's all part of this paragraph that it's in. It's not a separate paragraph, okay? So when you're done with your long quote, you go back over to the left because you're still in the same paragraph, and you're always going to say something after your quote, okay? So this is what you would call the analysis. This is where I do all my explaining about what this quote shows, okay? Also, I only chose a long quote because it's really great for my purposes. Don't use long quotes to give information or just uninteresting details that you can put in your own words. Use a long quote when the author says it in a really special way. And only Westover's words will really do the trick here. So, and it's perfect for my point, so I use a long quote. So be very picky about long quotes and don't use them all the time. Okay? So something else I want you to notice here. So looking back at these two paragraphs, we bring up the topic of Faye becoming more powerful by becoming a midwife, right? We have my research evidence that I give here, and then I bring it back to the book, and I apply it to this analysis here of Faye. So imagine in your outline, this is the part of my essay where I'm talking about Faye as a midwife. There's lots of other things I'm going to talk about, but this is just the very specific aspect of her life, which is her being a midwife. Okay, and so I decided to have two paragraphs back to back. In one of them, but they're both about her as a midwife. In one, I use my research evidence, and then in the next paragraph, I bring it back to my character that I'm writing about, and I analyze the character. I think this is a good model for your essay. If you have research, be thorough. Give a bunch of detail from your research about that topic, and then bring it back to the person you're writing about in the next paragraph. In a short paper, you might have put all this in one paragraph, but your goal here is a long paper. So in a way, this is part 2 of how to write a long paper. You divide things up more. You go really into depth with your research, new paragraph, then bring it back to your character. Okay? And I think this technique will help you to write a long paper for essay 3. Again, you can find these samples in Canvas, so look at them again if it helps. And I hope you find this video useful in figuring out your own paper.